Hey, it's Raijinku here, bringing you a new video. I know I haven't done a whole lot recently, but I figured I would start doing something for something I just got into here recently. It's called Cardfight Vanguard. It's a new card game that just came out over here in America a few months ago. There's currently 2 sets out, and it's a really fun game. And I wanted to go over a deck that I had just recently made up, and wanted to see what you guys thought of it. Alright, here it is. Alright, sorry for the glare here. I'll try to move so that's not so bad. Well, you start out with your triggers here. I run 4 heal triggers. Pretty standard. I did try running a deck before without those. It didn't go so well. I mean, I still won some, but not as much as I probably would have liked to. And I've noticed they actually come up more than I originally thought they would when you're actually playing a longer game. I do like to run draw triggers. I love draw triggers. These things are so ridiculous. If I could run all my triggers as draw triggers, I would actually consider it. Mainly because if you have draw triggers, think about it. You have all these cards flipping over during drive checks, during your damage checks, and unless it's one of your creature cards, you're flipping over one of your 16 cards that's going to add another card to your hand. So potentially, let's say you take 5 damage, that's more than likely at least 3 to 5 cards being added to your hand. So that can be really good. Plus, on your drive checks every turn, you could be potentially drawing an extra card, which you could always pitch with later to throw it to the guardian circle, and stuff like that. But for now, I'm using my criticals. Honestly, I don't really use Rakshasa's effect a whole lot. It's more about sending it from the deck during the other drive check, preferably. Otherwise, it's just sort of like, oh hey, guess what? 3,000. That kind of sucks. Then I do run the Tars. For any of you who haven't seen this card, it's a rare. It's basically 5,000. It's a critical trigger. It's good. Moving on to my starter, we have Lizard Soldier Conroe. He's basically one of those guys that's like, hey, guess what? Once a Kagero rides me, I can sack him if I counterblast. I can search my deck for any grade 0 or 1, but honestly, who's going to search for grade 0? I mean, really. You want to search for your heal trigger in your hand? No, I don't think so. Anyway, so yeah, I like taking damage the first couple turns. It's actually, I think, more beneficial to take damage. That way you're not wasting your cards, and on top of that, you have more that you can do. Okay, moving on to my grade 1s. I have my 2 Baris here. Ideally, in any kind of deck that runs 1 clan, you need to run perfect guards. You might be able to get by if you're lucky with your triggers and all that kind of stuff, but it's not worth running. Actually, it is worth running as long as you can get these. I wouldn't ever go past 3 in a deck, but I guess if like maybe Oracle Think Tank, they could do it because they have so many cards that they can draw. But basically, it's one of those cards that you can pitch it to the Guardian Zone, pitch another Kagero card to protect a Kagero for that battle. Again, it's only for 1 battle. They like to call these perfect guards or null guards. So in this deck I run 2 only because I have to. If I had a 3rd, I'd probably add it in. Moving on to my other grade 1s. Now we've got Kimnara here. It's one of those ones that says you can counterblast 1, put it in the soul, and then you can retire one of your opponent's grade 1s if you control a Kagero rearguard. Vanguard. Which this deck only runs Kagero, so there's no issue with that, coming up with different clans. Sort of going with him, I actually have a draw trigger I forgot to go over. I run 2 of this guy, the Gatling Claw Dragon. Now I know what I said earlier, I could potentially be running a total of 8 draw triggers, and I would consider that. And actually I think this build did before, but being able to sneak up on your opponent with some criticals, it just oftentimes wins you more games than, I guess, all the time being defensive. His effect is nice though. You can put it in your soul by counterblasting 1, and then you can retire one of your opponent's grade 0s. And 4,000 boost. The boost isn't anything to use. I would never use the boost, honestly. I have so many other options. But to be able to retire, like, let's say their Barkle, or whatever's behind their Vanguard, makes it a really good card. So anyways, moving on to my other grade 1s. Airmo is over here. It's definitely one of the best grade 1s that you can use, as long as it's behind a unit. Like this card and like Bari, you know, you don't want to, if you have the option, you do not want to ride these guys, unless you literally have no other grade 1s, and even then it kind of sucks. Because these are better on the field. They'll always be better on the field, because they're support cards. Let's say you've got too many grade 3s in your hand. You got Airmo here chilling. He's gonna back you up, and you can pitch a card if it hits. So essentially, you're trading cards you can't use or you can't use for shields or guardians, and you're turning them to something more useful in most cases. The only thing that stinks about this guy, and also about Gojo over here, you can end up drawing into your triggers. If you draw into your triggers, I mean, tough luck, but I mean, it happens. With any draw, actually. So, I mean, you run 16 in the deck, how else are you just gonna end up running into it from time to time? He helps balance this out. Honestly, I like Airmo better than Gojo, but Gojo, the only reason I really like running him is if I go first. If I go first, I can ride him on top of my Vanguard, have my Vanguard come to the rear guard, and then I can use his effect, rest him, pitch a crappy card, or like my draw trigger, my vanilla draw trigger, and then maybe draw into another grade that I could use, or, you know, I hate to say it, but, you know, maybe even a better shield, you know. Iron Tail Dragon over here, I really don't use him a lot. I use him more in my Nova Grappler build, mainly because he can just counterblast, and then you can just boost him. In some cases, he can boost guys up beyond the threshold of, or if I use 3, I could boost a guy by 10,000, which could make them have to use another guard, or be unable to guard something. So he can be really good. Then we have Bar. He's your basic 8,000 beater. You run 4 of this guy. If you wanted to tech in some of the other clans' 8,000 beaters, you could do that too. If he's not in your rear guard, Airmo should be. So, and by rear guard, I mean the actual rear guard, not the 2 up front where it's like, oh hey, I'm not really a rear guard, I'm a front rear guard. Alright, we're going to move on to grade 2s here. This is one of the tech choices. I've seen this used by a few people, and I've seen a lot of other cards potentially being useful. This is definitely one of those cards. In this deck, I really don't use anything in the soul. If I had Blazing Flare Dragon, I would consider the soul stuff, but I'm not going to. So, and even so, Blazing Flare would only get used once unless you completely devoted your deck to soul charging, which, you know, good luck for you. Anyways, he is really good. He basically starts out as a 9,000 grade 2, which really isn't anything. But then if you look closely, he has a Soul Blast ability. Soul Blast 1, he gains plus 5,000. Yeah, he has to return back to the deck at the end of that battle, but he's swinging at 14, and usually he ends up being boosted by one of these guys, so it puts him over 20 grand, which is really hard for your opponent to get through, and I have actually won a few games with him solely because of that reason. Moving on to other grade 2s, I have a couple burgers in here, primarily because Really didn't have a whole lot of other options for grade 2s. He is a superior interceptor, which basically means you can send him to guard, and he adds an additional 5,000, so he goes up to 10,000 shield. That's pretty much all he's useful for. This guy over here, I would run 4 of him. I actually did when I first started the game. But this deck doesn't really have ways to flip over the damage. I've used it before where, with the Nova Grappler version, which teched in like Mr. Invincible, and I used like a bunch of rear guards that were good without actually having to be a Vanguard. So he just makes it really awkward to try to run him in another deck that isn't Kagero, because it has to have a Kagero Vanguard to use his effect. So I would consider maybe running 3 of him just to get to him more often. But I mean, his effect is basically really devastating, because you can go for game if you play him right. Especially if they have something like Burger on the field, and they, something like that. The other grade 2 I have here is Nahalem. Basically, vanilla 10,000 beater. You can wall your opponent so they can't get over your defenses if they're sitting with weak monsters or creatures, whatever you want to call them. Really not a whole lot more to this guy. Now moving on to my grade 3s, just to make you guys aware, my grade 3s are nowhere near being completed. I would prefer to actually run more of other cards. Let's see, Vortex Dragon here, he's good as a Vanguard, and specifically that. Yeah, you can use his other ability where you can do the Mega Blast, where you choose up to 3 of your opponent's rear guards, retire them. It's really not going to happen very often. Most of those Mega Blast effects happen like once every 15, 20 games, I'm guessing. It's almost like getting quads in poker. I mean, it doesn't happen. At least not enough. So, main reason for him is you soul charge, which is good, I guess. Except for the fact that it's mandatory. That's right. This will focus here. Yeah, it's an auto effect, so you sort of just have to deal with it. But it does add 2,000 to his attack. That's the only reason I really run him. It's just basically, hey, guess what? I'm 12,000. I'm being backed up by Bar, so now guess what? I'm at 20,000. So he's sitting at 20,000 now, and this is before Twin Drive. So potentially 30,000. They're going to have to drop a crap load or a perfect guard if they really need it. I guess the other tech choice of the deck here is Blockade. Personally, if I'm able to get a hold of them, I'm going to run 3 to 4 of this card easily. Mainly because it is so disruptive to your opponent's strategy, especially if they have 2 interceptors already on the field. He's just one of those cards that's just like, oh hey, the game state just changed immediately, deal with it. I really like this card. It'd be even better if he was 11,000, but you can't always get what you want. So my recommendation is don't run him, because I want to run him. If you have any extra copies, give them to me. No, I'm joking, obviously. He is a really good card. He's very underrated right now. I think a lot of people take for granted that they do have interceptors before he's played, and they'll just pitch a bunch of stuff in their hand. This basically is, I guess, a Vanguard beefed up version of Silent Tom, but reversed. So, I mean, this should easily be the same price as Silent Tom. I mean, honestly. I mean, the only downside to it is it has to be your Vanguard, but it is amazing when it is. So anyways, that's enough about him. And finally, we have Dragonic Overlord. I'm sporting all 4 alternate arts here. He is really good. Honestly, I probably prefer to run him as a rear guard. I tried a version out with him that used the Mr. Invincibles. Worked really well, especially since I was getting his counterblast off at least 2 2 to 3 times each game, easily. In this deck, it's only going to happen maybe once. But he is a really good card, 11,000 beater, can get pumped up to 16,000 if he's in your Vanguard. You know, he can get boosted by bar, and then go up another 8,000 up to, was that 24,000? And then he could twin drive 2 potentially, putting up to 34,000, which is ridiculous. So yeah, if my math is wrong, you know, I'm sorry about that, but pretty sure it is. Good. Anyway, so all in all, that's the deck. It does work really well overall. At my locals, it's won quite a few matches. It's all really in how you play it. If you strategize correctly with things like this card, Airmo, by pitching things and by using blockade at the right times, you can do really well with it. I'll give you guys some updates on this in the future, and just remember to rate, subscribe, comment below, and if you have any questions, I'll answer them as I can. You guys have a good day, and this is Raijinku. See you later.